Welcome to today's deep dive, where we'll be focusing on childhood diabetes.
Okay.
You sent us a really interesting collection of articles and resources on the topic.
Yeah,
And even just skimming through them, it's clear there's a lot to uncover.
absolutely.
So today we're on a mission to understand the key differences between type 1 and type 2 diabetes.
Right.
How to spot those sometimes really subtle symptoms.
Yes.
And just get a handle on the basics of managing both types in children.
It's a lot to cover, but it's so important.
Definitely. And one of the things that really jumped out at me going through these articles,
Uh-huh.
how different type 1 and type 2 actually are. I mean, they're not just
Yeah.
variations on a theme, right?
Okay.
They each have their own unique origin story
Exactly.
and require very different management approaches.
That's key.
It is.
Yeah.
And understanding that difference is really the foundation for everything else.
It is.
Diagnosis, treatment, long-term care, the whole nine yards.
Think of it this way.
Okay.
Both types involve insulin, which is essential for the body to use glucose for energy, right?
But the root cause of the problem is completely different.
So let's start with type 1 diabetes.
Okay.
The articles describe it as an autoimmune condition,
Right.
which, to be honest, sounds a little intimidating.
Yeah, it can sound that way.
Can you break that down for us? What does that actually mean?
Sure. In the simplest terms, it means the body's defense system. So the immune system
Okay.
mistakenly attacks the cells in the pancreas that produce insulin.
The pancreas.
Yeah, it's like a
Yeah.
case of friendly fire, basically,
Oh, wow.
but with really serious consequences.
That analogy really paints a clear picture.
Yeah.
And I think it makes it easier to understand why type 1 often seems to appear so suddenly
It does.
and why it can become serious so quickly.
Exactly.
You know, one of the things you highlighted in your notes
Huh?
that really resonated with what I was reading in these articles
Yeah.
is the importance of watching out for a child's frequent thirst
Right.
and any unexplained weight loss.
Absolutely. Those are considered like the classic.
The hallmark symptoms of diabetes. And when you think about it, it makes sense.
Oh.
If your body can't use glucose for energy because there's not enough insulin,
Yeah.
it's going to try to get rid of that glucose any way it can.
So that's
Yeah.
the frequent urination and the constant thirst.
Exactly. And without energy from glucose,
Okay.
the body starts burning fat, which leads to that unexplained weight loss.
You know, another symptom that really caught my eye in these articles was fruity smelling breath. I never really made that connection before.
It's a strange one.
It is. What's the link there?
So that fruity breath is actually a sign of ketones building up in the body.
Ketones.
Yeah. They're produced when the body can't use glucose as fuel.
Yeah.
So it starts breaking down fat instead.
Okay.
It's basically a
Thanks.
warning sign that things are getting serious and medical attention is needed right away.
So if you notice any of these symptoms in a child,
Yeah.
especially that fruity breath,
Especially that.
it's a huge red flag to
Yeah.
get them to a doctor immediately.
Absolutely. Early diagnosis is so critical with type 1 diabetes.
Okay.
Blood tests to measure glucose levels
Right.
are essential for confirming the diagnosis. And if symptoms are severe,
Yeah.
immediate medical intervention is vital
He's Charles.
to prevent complications like DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis,
Oh, wow.
which happens when ketones build up to dangerous levels in the blood.
That sounds very serious.
It is. It can be life-threatening.
So that really underscores how important it is to be aware of those symptoms and
Yeah.
act quickly.
Right away.
So we've talked about type 1, which is an autoimmune condition, often with a sudden onset and those, really classic symptoms.
Exactly.
But the articles you provided point out that type 2 diabetes,
Right.
particularly in children, often has a very different origin story.
It does.
One that's more closely tied to lifestyle.
It is, and it's becoming increasingly common
Yeah.
among children, especially those aged 10 to 19.
And this is where things start to get really interesting.
Yeah.
Because the symptoms of type 2
Yes.
can be similar to type 1,
They can.
but they often develop much more gradually
More subtly.
and subtly.
Yeah.
One of the articles even mentioned that children who lost 7% of their body weight and engaged in moderate exercise like brisk walking for 30 minutes a day
Right.
saw significant improvement in their blood sugar control.
It's amazing.
Some even reversed their diabetes completely.
It's incredible what lifestyle changes can do.
It is. So while you might see those classic symptoms,
Yes.
increased thirst, frequent urination fatigue,
Yep.
weight fluctuations in both types.
Uh-huh.
Type 2 often presents with some less obvious clues.
It does.
Things like frequent infections, slow healing sores,
Yeah.
and even dark patches on the skin,
Right.
particularly around the neck or armpits.
That can be a sign.
Wait, dark patches on the skin?
Yeah.
That's a new one for me.
Yeah, it's called Acanthosis nigricans.
Acanthosis nigricans.
Yeah, and it's a sign of insulin resistance, which is a key feature of type 2 diabetes.
Okay.
So the body's producing insulin,
Yeah.
but the cells aren't responding to it effectively. It's like knocking on a door and no one answers, even though, someone's home.
Okay, that's a really good way to visualize it.
Yeah.
So along with those classic symptoms, if a child is showing these less obvious signs, especially if there are other risk factors,
Yes.
like a family history of diabetes,
And
being overweight or obese, or having a sedentary lifestyle,
All of those things increase the risk.
it's definitely worth getting them checked for type 2.
Absolutely.
Right.
Early diagnosis is key.
And this is where it gets even more fascinating because unlike type 1,
Yes.
which requires lifelong insulin therapy,
Right.
type 2 can sometimes be managed
It can.
or even reversed through lifestyle changes
Lifestyle changes are so powerful.
like diet and exercise.
Exactly.
It's really empowering to know that there's the potential for reversing the condition
It is.
before it becomes a lifelong challenge.
Absolutely. Early intervention and those lifestyle modifications can make such a difference in the lives of children with type 2.
It's all about empowering them to make healthier choices and giving them the tools they need to
Exactly.
potentially reverse the condition.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
This is all really valuable information
It is.
for anyone who have children in their lives.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've learned about the two main types of diabetes that affect children, their distinct symptoms,
Yeah.
the differences in their risk factors.
Right.
But there's so much more to explore.
There is.
Coming up next, we'll dive deeper into how these different types of diabetes are managed.
Okay.
So stay tuned.
Great.
Okay, so we've uncovered a lot about the differences between type 1 and type 2 diabetes,
We have.
from those telltale symptoms
Right.
to those distinct risk factors.
Uh-huh.
But now I'm really curious to delve into management strategies.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like that's where things really diverge.
You're absolutely right. Management approaches are very different
Yeah.
between the two types.
Uh-huh.
With type 1, the focus is on replacing the missing insulin.
Okay.
Whereas with type 2, it often starts with those lifestyle modifications.
So let's start with type 1.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier that it requires lifelong insulin therapy.
It does.
What does that actually look like in practical terms?
So because the body can't produce its own insulin in type 1, it needs to get it from an external source.
Okay.
And this usually involves regular injections
Uh-huh.
or using an insulin pump, which delivers a continuous controlled dose of insulin.
So it's not as simple as just like taking a pill every day.
No, unfortunately not.
Okay.
Insulin is a protein hormone, and if
Yeah.
it were taken orally,
Yeah.
it would get broken down in the digestive system before it could even reach the bloodstream where it's needed.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So insulin injections or pumps are essential
They are.
in people with type 1. The articles also emphasize the importance of regular blood glucose monitoring.
Right.
Why is that so crucial?
Well, think of it like checking the fuel gauge in your car.
Okay.
You need to know how much you have left to avoid running out.
Right.
Similarly, people with type 1 diabetes
Yeah.
need to monitor their blood glucose levels regularly to make sure they're staying within a healthy range.
So it's all about maintaining that balance
Exactly.
and avoiding those dangerous highs and lows.
Precisely.
And how often do they need to actually check their blood sugar?
It varies from person to person,
Okay.
and it depends on their specific treatment plan,
Yeah?
but usually it's multiple times a day.
Wow.
This might include checking before meals and sometimes even during the night.
So it's quite a lot of monitoring.
It is. It's a commitment.
It sounds like managing type 1 diabetes requires a lot of dedication,
It does.
attention to detail.
But it's manageable.
Yeah.
And with proper management, children with type 1 can lead full and active lives.
That's reassuring to hear. The articles also stress that even with the insulin therapy, a balanced diet
Yes.
and regular physical activity
Yes.
are still really important for overall health.
They are.
Why is that?
Well, insulin is just one piece of the puzzle, right?
Okay.
A healthy diet helps regulate those blood sugar levels.
Right.
And exercise actually improves insulin sensitivity.
So it makes it work more effectively.
Exactly. It's like teamwork.
So it's about working with the body, not against it.
Precisely.
Okay. So now let's shift gears and talk about type 2 diabetes management,
Okay.
which, as we've discussed, can be quite different.
Very different.
You mentioned earlier that it often begins with these lifestyle modifications.
Right.
What kind of lifestyle changes are we talking about specifically?
The initial approach usually involves adopting a healthier diet
Okay.
and incorporating more physical activity.
So it's kind of a two-pronged approach.
It is.
Reducing the amount of sugar and processed foods
Yes.
while increasing the amount of energy burned.
Exactly, creating a more balanced energy equation.
And the encouraging thing is that these lifestyle changes can significantly impact managing and even reversing type 2.
They can, especially in children.
That's wonderful. But the articles also mention that sometimes lifestyle changes alone aren't enough.
Sometimes not.
And medications might be necessary.
They might.
Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. So if those lifestyle modifications aren't sufficient to control those blood sugar levels, medications like metformin might be prescribed.
Metformin?
Yes. It works by improving the body's sensitivity to insulin.
So it's like giving that insulin a helping hand.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that medication is never a substitute for those healthy lifestyle choices.
Right.
It's about finding the right balance and working with a healthcare provider to create a personalized management plan.
This all highlights the importance of early detection and intervention.
It does.
The sooner you catch these conditions, the sooner you can start implementing those effective management strategies.
Early detection is key.
This has been a truly eye-opening deep dive.
It has.
Into childhood diabetes.
Yeah.
I mean, we explored the two main types, the unique characteristics, and the very different approaches to managing them.
It's fascinating.
It is. But we're not quite done yet. Next time we'll discuss the emotional and social impact of diabetes on children.
Okay.
Which is a really crucial aspect we can't overlook.
It is.
So stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
Wow. We've covered so much ground in our deep dive into childhood diabetes.
We have.
From understanding the differences between type 1 and type 2 to exploring those, really complex management approaches.
Absolutely. It's been fascinating, hasn't it?
It really has. But before we wrap up,
Yeah.
I think it's so important to talk about something that's often overlooked, the emotional and social impact of diabetes on children.
It's crucial.
Because it's not just about those physical symptoms in medical management.
Right.
Right? It's about the whole child.
It is about the whole child.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Imagine being a child
Yeah.
and having to constantly monitor your blood sugar, inject yourself with insulin,
Yeah.
or make different food choices than your friends.
Right.
It can be a really heavy burden to carry.
It can.
Yeah.
And one of the articles mentioned that children with diabetes
Yeah,
might face challenges with self-esteem,
absolutely.
body image, and social acceptance.
It's tough.
It's heartbreaking to think about a child feeling different or isolated
It is.
or shamed because of their condition.
And that's where the role of parents, caregivers, and the wider community becomes so important.
Right.
We need to create a supportive and understanding environment for these children.
Exactly. So what can we do to support them? How can we help them navigate these challenges?
Open communication is key.
Okay.
Letting them know that they're not alone, that their feelings are valid, and that it's okay to ask for help. Yeah.
And it's also important to educate ourselves about diabetes
Okay.
so we can really understand what they're going through and provide that informed support.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
What about body image?
Yeah.
Especially for children with type 2 diabetes who might be struggling with weight management.
Right.
How can we approach that topic sensitively?
Instead of focusing on weight, let's shift the emphasis to healthy habits,
Okay.
enjoyable activities, and building a positive relationship with their bodies.
Right. It's not about achieving a certain size or shape.
Exactly.
It's about feeling good in your own skin
It is.
and making choices that support your overall well-being.
Precisely.
And one of the articles highlighted the power of connection. Connecting children with others who have diabetes, either through support groups or online communities, can really help them feel less isolated and more understood.
Absolutely. Sharing experiences and learning from one another can be incredibly empowering.
It's like creating a tribe, a network of support.
Where they can share their, triumphs, their struggles, everything in between.
And know that they're not alone.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey of learning and discovery.
Yeah.
We've explored the scientific aspects of childhood diabetes.
Right.
But we've also delved into the human side.
Yes.
The emotional and social impact.
That's so important.
That's so often overlooked.
It is.
And it's a powerful reminder that knowledge really is power.
It is.
By understanding the different types of diabetes, recognizing the symptoms, grasping those basics of management, we can empower ourselves.
Absolutely.
And the children in our lives.
Right.
To make informed decisions and navigate this complex condition with confidence.
We can.
We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
But this is just the beginning of your learning journey.
It is.
There are countless resources available to help you deepen your understanding.
There are.
And find the support you need.
And remember, you're not alone. There's a whole community out there.
There is.
Ready to embrace you and your child on this path.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into childhood diabetes.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've come away feeling informed, empowered,
yes,
and inspired to make a difference.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep seeking knowledge and spreading awareness.
Yes.
Together, we can create a brighter future for all children affected by diabetes.
We can